What's happening, guys? It's Mike's Total Dragon channel, and I just finished binging the New 52 Swamp Thing run. This book ran for a grand total of 40 issues, so it was quite a bit to read. So it took me a couple of days to read all of it. I'll give you a couple of really quick thoughts on it. The book was initially launched with issue number 1 by Scott Snyder and Yannick Paquette as the artist, and they would stay on the book from, if you count the 0 issue, Scott Snyder would stay on until issue number 18, at which point then Charles Soule would come on, and he would have a rotating cast of artists on the book, and that is when the book ran from issue 19 to issue 40. But outside of that, those are the only 2 artists that were on the book. The big difference between this Swamp Thing and the previous Swamp Thing, which most people know from the Alan Moore type run, the infamous anatomy lesson issue, is this is very much like an action horror. There is a lot more action going on in this Swamp Thing than there was in the Alan Moore Swamp Thing, which was kind of just like an exploration of the character and, the Parliament of Trees and the green and everything. This has a lot of that, but it also introduces concepts such as the Red, which is when they have the tie-in with Animal Man, the Decay, which ties into Abigail and Anton Arcane. What I will say, the book, although there's two writers on there, they basically, and it runs for 40 issues, the entirety of the run is basically split into 2, not just 2 writers, but 2 big stories. Issue 0 through number 18 right here is basically Swamp Thing's battle against the Rot. So, and that is kind of like it's another one of the elemental forces, but it is totally evil, while the green, for lack of a better term, is more benevolent than the Rot is. But the Rot is, for all intents and purposes, the big bad of these first 18 issues, and that is what Swamp Thing Alec Holland deals with during Scott Snyder's run. There's a lot of fight scenes, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of gore here, because the Rot is basically just decomposing flesh. So we see a lot, like in this, on this cover right here, we see a lot of, just corpses getting torn apart. So that is, without giving anything away, Swamp Thing versus the Rot makes up the first 18 issues, the entirety of the Scott Snyder run. And then when you get to Charles Soule taking over with issue number 19, from 19 to 40, which it ends, the basic concept is Swamp Thing Alec Holland has thrown the Parliament of Trees out of leadership, and he establishes himself as a leader. He does not agree with the direction that the Parliament of Trees has taken. He feels like they have lost their way. So in these 20 issues that Charles Soule writes, that is the overwhelming theme, and that Alec Holland is now calling his shots as Swamp Thing, and he is not taking orders anymore. And they also have they introduce more concepts in this Charles Soule's, in addition to the Rot, the Green, and the Red. towards the end, they have one that is essentially all of technology is now like its own pantheon. You know, computers and technology has formed its own, you know, kingdom like the green has, and they have their own champion, their own avatar as well. That's introduced. We see Jason Woodrue. He comes back in this and battles Swamp Thing to be the avatar of the green. We are introduced into a cult that has worshipped and followed the green throughout all of time. They make an appearance, and you know, there's a lot of behind the scenes plotting and you know, machinations going on with that cult, so to speak. But in 40 issues, 2 writers, and you have 2 really separate stories throughout this 40 issue run. I feel like the Scott Snyder run is a part of, or the part of the book is a little bit stronger, but the Charles Soule part is not you know, even though I think the Scott Snyder part is probably a little bit stronger, it's not by much. The Charles Soule stuff is pretty strong as well, and it only starts to drop off towards the end, and I feel that's just because Charles Soule ran out of real estate, so to speak, and with the book ending, he didn't have a chance to wrap it up as properly as he would have liked, so he kind of had to fast forward and, you know, kind of cut some stuff out and you know, that he wouldn't have done if he had more time on the book, if it hadn't gotten cut or canceled, so to speak. But the majority of these issues here, you will be able to find them. I don't know if you'll be able to find them in a dollar box or not, but you know, they shouldn't be terribly expensive to find. You know, I would think that your comic book shop will probably have some for $2 to $3 each. So if you were to do a run of this, you would probably just end up paying basically cover price for all of them. There's no keys or no speculator, no spec books in this run. So you're basically paying cover price for all of it. But all things considered, a really, really good book. A lot of horror, a lot of action. John Constantine is in here. Etrigan the Demon is in here. So you have cameo. Superman's in here. Aquaman. So you have very numerous cameos from a lot of the DC mainstays, which, you know, really lends itself to showing that the book takes place in the DC universe as a whole and not just in its own little corner of the DC universe. So, but that is my quick thoughts on New 52 Swamp Thing. It's definitely one of the brighter parts of the New 52. There wasn't a whole bunch of really great material that came out of the New 52, but Swamp Thing is definitely one of them. So till next time, you guys take care. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.